Some Kennedy half dollars are worth more than just 50 cents. They're worth hundreds, even thousands of dollars. Today, we're counting down the top 5 most valuable Kennedy half dollars and the surprising history behind them. First up, the 1968 Kennedy half dollar is more than just a coin. It's a symbol of a changing America, both politically and economically. Introduced just 4 years after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, this half dollar carried with it a sense of national reverence and unity. But by 1968, the coin's role in the U.S. economy had shifted dramatically. And that makes the 1968 edition a very special issue in the Kennedy series. Let's start with the context. When the Kennedy half dollar was first introduced in 1964, it was made of 90% silver, a tribute befitting the late president. Americans were so taken by the coin that most people hoarded it as a keepsake rather than spending it. As a result, it rarely circulated, which defeated the very purpose of its creation as legal tender. But the economic pressures of the 1960s were mounting. Silver prices were rising, and the cost of minting these coins was becoming unsustainable. To address this, the U.S. Mint made a major decision. Starting in 1965, they reduced the silver content from 90% to 40%. This new composition, known as clad coinage, featured a core of mostly copper sandwiched between layers of a silver alloy. The 1968 Kennedy half dollar was part of this second-generation silver coinage. It still had the appearance of silver, but with far less intrinsic value. One notable feature of the 1968 Kennedy half dollar is its mint mark. For the first time since 1964, the U.S. Mint resumed using mint marks on its coins. The 1968 half dollar was struck only at the Denver Mint and carries the D mint mark on the reverse side, just below the olive branch clutched in the eagle's right talon. This location was consistent with other coins of the time and marked a return to numismatic normalcy. In terms of design, the 1968 Kennedy half dollar remained largely unchanged. On the obverse is the left-facing portrait of President Kennedy, designed by Gilroy Roberts. The image was based on a bust he had created years earlier for a presidential medal. Surrounding the portrait are the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," along with the date, 1968. On the reverse, Frank Gasparo's heraldic eagle design, adapted from the Great Seal of the United States, features prominently. The eagle is clutching an olive branch and a bundle of arrows, with a field of stars and the inscription "United States of America" and half dollar. The mintage for the 1968 D. Kennedy half dollar was substantial. Over 246 million coins were struck. However, the vast majority of these coins were not saved in pristine condition. Many went into circulation and were handled heavily. As a result, high-grade uncirculated specimens, especially those with sharp detail and no blemishes, are increasingly sought after by collectors today. There is also a special version of the 1968 Kennedy half dollar that was included in the U.S. Mint's annual proof set. These proof coins were struck at the San Francisco Mint and bear the S mint mark. They were never released into circulation and were only sold to collectors. The proof version features a mirror-like background and frosted details, making it visually striking and highly desirable in top grades. Now, let's talk value. The standard 1968 D. Kennedy half dollar in circulated condition is generally worth its silver content, about $3 to $5, depending on the current price of silver. However, coins in uncirculated condition can sell for more. A nicely preserved example in mint state condition, such as MS-65 or better, can fetch anywhere from $15 to $50. Higher grades like MS-67 are far scarcer and can be valued at over $100, especially if they exhibit strong luster and clean surfaces. For the proof version, The value is often dependent on condition and cameo contrast. Deep cameo examples, those with strong contrast between the frosted design and the mirror-like fields, can command prices upwards of $40 to $100 or more in proof 69 condition. A perfect PR70 example, though rare, can sell for several $100s, depending on market demand. Next up, the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar may look like just another piece of pocket change, but it represents a major turning point in American coinage. While its face value is only 50 cents, its story, rooted in both tribute and transformation, makes it one of the more significant issues in the Kennedy series. Understanding this coin means understanding the evolving economic and numismatic landscape of the late 1970s. To appreciate the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar, we need to go back to its origin. The Kennedy half-dollar was first introduced in 1964, just months after President John F. Kennedy was tragically assassinated in Dallas. Americans, in an unprecedented act of public mourning, embraced the new half-dollar as a tribute to their fallen leader. The coin quickly became a symbol of unity and national grief. The original 1964 version was struck in 90% silver, but due to rising silver prices, the composition changed to 40% silver from 1965 to 1970. After that, the mint completely eliminated silver for circulation coins. By the time 1979 rolled around, the Kennedy half-dollar was being struck in what's known as a copper-nickel-clad composition. This means it had an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. The look was similar to silver, but the value had shifted. The coin was no longer made with precious metal, and it was not widely used in everyday commerce. Most people still associated half-dollars with collecting or hoarding, and as a result, they saw very limited circulation. The 1979 Kennedy half-dollar was struck at 3 different mints: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Each of these has its own mint mark. The Philadelphia version has no mint mark and was struck for general circulation. The Denver version carries a small D mint mark on the obverse, located just above the date, while the San Francisco Mint produced proof coins bearing an S mint mark. One of the most interesting aspects of the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar lies in its proof version from the San Francisco Mint. There were actually 2 different varieties of the S mint mark used that year, commonly referred to by collectors as Type 1 and Type 2. The Type 1 version features a more filled or blob-like S, which was used on most of the proof coins in 1979. The Type 2 version shows a much sharper, clearer S and is far scarcer. Because of its lower mintage and distinct appearance, the Type 2 proof is highly prized among collectors today and commands a premium over the more common. In terms of design, the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar stayed true to the original 1964 artwork. The obverse features Gilroy Roberts's portrait of President Kennedy, facing left. The inscriptions read, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," with the date 1979 at the bottom. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, depicts the presidential seal, an eagle clutching an olive branch and arrows, surrounded by 50 stars, and the words "United States of America" and "half-dollar." This enduring design has remained largely unchanged throughout the decades. Mintage numbers for the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar were quite high. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 68 million pieces, while Denver produced over 15 million. The San Francisco Mint issued over 3.6 million proof coins. Because these numbers were so large, the coin is generally common in circulated condition. However, collectors seek out high-grade examples, especially uncirculated and proof versions with minimal marks and strong luster. One of the most interesting aspects of the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar lies in its proof version from the San Francisco Mint. There were actually two different varieties of the S Mint mark used that year, commonly referred to by collectors as Type 1 and Type 2. The Type 1 version features a more filled or blob-like S, which was used on most of the proof coins in 1979. The Type 2 version shows a much sharper, clearer S and is far scarcer. Because of its lower mintage and distinct appearance, the Type 2 proof is highly prized among collectors today and commands a premium over the more common. In terms of design, the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar stayed true to the original 1964 artwork. The obverse features Gilroy Roberts's portrait of President Kennedy, facing left. The inscriptions read, "Liberty" and "In God We Trust," with the date 1979 at the bottom. The reverse, designed by Frank Gasparo, depicts the presidential seal, an eagle clutching an olive branch and arrows, surrounded by 50 stars, and the words "United States of America" and "half-dollar." This enduring design has remained largely unchanged throughout the decades. Mintage numbers for the 1979 Kennedy half-dollar were quite high. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 68 million pieces, while Denver produced over 15 million. The San Francisco Mint issued over 3.6 million proof coins. Because these numbers were so large, the coin is generally common in circulated condition. However, collectors seek out high-grade examples, especially uncirculated and proof versions with minimal marks and strong luster. Next up, the 1967 Kennedy half-dollar is more than just a coin. It's a snapshot of American history during a time of change, challenge, and commemoration. Though its face value is 50 cents, its story goes far beyond that. It captures the nation's response to the tragic loss of President John F. Kennedy and the monetary shifts that followed during the 1960s. Today, the 1967 Kennedy half-dollar holds significant interest for collectors, not only for its design and symbolism, but also for its unique place in U.S. coinage history. To understand the 1967 Kennedy half-dollar, we first need to go back to the beginning. After President Kennedy was assassinated in November 1963, there was an immediate public demand to memorialize him in a meaningful way. In record time, the U.S. Mint redesigned the half-dollar to feature his portrait. The coin was released in 1964 and instantly became a national icon. Initially struck in 90% silver, the Kennedy half-dollar quickly became a hoarded piece. People kept them as mementos, not for spending. However, as silver prices rose, the cost of minting coins with high silver content became too high. In response, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from the dime and the quarter entirely, and reduced the silver content of the half-dollar from 90% to 40%. This change marked a new chapter in American coinage, one where precious metals began disappearing from circulating coins. The 1967 Kennedy half-dollar is one of these second-generation silver coins. Unlike other years, the 1967 half-dollar was struck without a mint mark, no matter where it was made. This was due to the Coinage Act's temporary suspension of mint marks to discourage hoarding and speculation during a time of coin shortages. Therefore, while most 1967 Kennedy half-dollars were minted in Denver and Philadelphia, there's no mint mark to distinguish them. In terms of composition, the 1967 half-dollar is made of 40% silver and 60% copper. The coin has an outer layer of silver alloy bonded to a core made mostly of copper. It weighs 11.5 grams and has a reeded edge. Although its silver content is less than the 1964 version, it still retains a noticeable shine and a bit of intrinsic value due to its silver content. The design of the coin remains unchanged from its original 1964 debut. On the obverse is Gilroy Roberts's left-facing portrait of President Kennedy. Surrounding the image are the inscriptions "Liberty," "In God We Trust," and the date 1967. On the reverse side is Frank Gasparo's heraldic eagle, adapted from the Great Seal of the United States. The eagle clutches an olive branch and arrows, symbolizing peace and strength, surrounded by stars, with the inscriptions "United States of America" and $50. As for mintage, the U.S. Mint produced over 295 million Kennedy $50 in 1967, an enormous quantity, even by modern standards. These coins were part of what the Mint called Special Mint Sets, or SMS, since traditional proof and uncirculated sets were not offered from 1965 to 1967. Instead, the Mint issued these SMS sets in specially packaged holders for collectors. These coins were struck with extra care, resulting in better surfaces than normal circulation coins, though not quite the same as proofs. The coins from these special mint sets typically show a satin or semi-proof-like finish, and they are often found in better condition than regular business strikes. Some SMS coins from 1967 are known for a strong cameo effect, frosted devices against mirrored fields, which are especially sought after by collectors. Next up, the 1974 Kennedy $50 is a coin rich in historical significance and a reflection of America's numismatic evolution in the mid-20th century. Although it's easy to overlook today, the 1974 $50 has an interesting backstory and continues to be a favorite among coin collectors. With no silver in its composition and high mintage numbers, this coin isn't rare, but it holds deep symbolic value and occasional surprises for those who take a closer look. To understand the 1974 Kennedy $50, it helps to know the broader context in which it was minted. The Kennedy $50 series began in 1964, less than 5 months after President John F. Kennedy's assassination. The nation was still mourning, and the United States Mint quickly acted to honor his legacy by replacing the Franklin $50 with one bearing Kennedy's portrait. The public embraced the coin, and the first year saw massive hoarding, not just out of respect, but also because the original 1964 coin was made of 90% silver. From 1965 to 1970, the Mint reduced the silver content to 40%, and by 1971, silver was removed entirely from circulation strikes. The 1974 Kennedy $50 was struck just 3 years after this major transition. By this point, the coin was being produced in copper-nickel clad, a much more affordable and durable composition. It marked a new era, where $50 had become symbolic more than functional. Though still legal tender, $50 were no longer widely used in daily transactions. 3 different types of 1985 Kennedy $50 were minted. Those struck for general circulation in Philadelphia and Denver, and special proof coins made in San Francisco for collectors. The Philadelphia coins have no mint mark. The Denver coins carry a D mint mark, and the San Francisco proof coins are marked with an S. These mint marks appear just above the date on the obverse of the coin. In terms of mintage, the numbers were substantial. Over 18.5 million coins were struck at the Philadelphia Mint, while the Denver Mint produced nearly 32.8 million. Additionally, the San Francisco Mint produced around 3.3 million proof coins for inclusion in annual collector sets. These quantities make the 1985 Kennedy $50 a common issue, especially in circulated condition. Because these coins contain no silver, their base metal composition means that circulated examples typically hold little premium. In worn condition, most 1985 Kennedy half dollars are worth around 50 cents to $1, primarily due to collector interest. However, coins in uncirculated condition, particularly those with a sharp strike and original mint luster, can fetch slightly higher prices. A mint state 63 to 65 example might sell for $2 to $5, depending on demand and the quality of the coin. High-grade examples, especially those graded MS-66 or MS-67 by a third-party grading service like PCGS or NGC, are much less common. While not rare, they do carry a stronger premium due to their condition and appeal to collectors pursuing top-quality registry sets. MS-67 specimens can sell for $30 to $75, and near-perfect examples in MS-68 can command $150 or more. Though finding coins in this condition is not easy, given the high-speed minting process used for general circulation strikes.
This 1983 piece in fine condition hides a story that could knock you right off your chair. The year 1983 was one of the most intriguing for coin collectors because, unlike many other dates, these half dollars were not released into general circulation in large numbers. The U.S. Mint produced them mainly for collectors, and as a result, finding one today in this condition is nothing short of a miracle. Look closely, you'll see the classic left-facing portrait of John F. Kennedy, his hair finely detailed, the word Liberty framing the top, and the date 1983 sitting boldly below his neck. The reverse still proudly carries the presidential coat of arms, the heraldic eagle with its shield, arrows, and olive branch, surrounded by United States of America and the denomination half dollar. But here's where it gets exciting. Some of these 1983 half dollars have subtle minting quirks that collectors absolutely drool over. A few came out with light double strikes on the lettering, barely noticeable without magnification. Others have an unusually sharp strike because they were struck with fresh dies intended for collector sets. In rare cases, an off-center strike or a clipped planche from this year has surfaced, and those have sold for breathtaking amounts. Even a standard fine-condition 1983 half dollar can fetch $25 to $40 from the right buyer, simply because so few survived circulation wear. But in uncirculated condition, these can jump past $1,000. Now here's the shocker, an error 1983. Kennedy half dollar with dramatic die doubling once stunned the auction world, hammering in at over $475,000. That's the kind of life-changing value hiding in plain sight. The real trick to identifying a potentially valuable 1983 is to look for strong detail in Kennedy's hair and the eagle's feathers. The sharper they appear, the better. Check for any doubling on "In God We Trust" or the date. And if you happen to see one with a missing mint mark or a visibly misaligned strike, you could be holding one of the most coveted half dollars from the decade. Just imagine. A coin that most people would overlook as pocket change could, in the right condition, buy you a luxury car, pay off your home, or fund your dream retirement. And this is just the beginning. The next coin in our list takes the rarity and the value to a whole new level, so don't blink, because you won't believe what comes next. Now let's step back in time to a coin that not only carries monetary value, but also deep historical weight, the 1968 Kennedy half dollar in fine condition. This was just the fourth year of the Kennedy series, created in honor of President John F. Kennedy after his tragic assassination in 1963, and by 1968, the nation was still feeling the ripples of that loss. But here's where things get truly fascinating. 1968 was the very first year the Kennedy half dollar bore the small S mint mark from San Francisco on proof coins, and for the general circulation pieces only two mints produced them, Denver and San Francisco. That alone makes the 1968 date one of the most collectible early issues. This coin still has a secret most casual holders don't realize. It contains 40% silver. Yes, even though the U.S. Mint had reduced silver content after 1964, Kennedy, halves from 1965 through 1970, still held that precious metal, giving them both numismatic and intrinsic value. In fine condition, the luster may have softened and some of the hairlines on Kennedy's portrait might be worn, but the date, lettering, and overall integrity remain bold and clear. On the reverse, that proud heraldic eagle design still shows. Its shield and spread wings, even if time has smoothed some of the finer feather details. Now the values here can get eye-watering. A standard circulated example in fine condition might bring $6 to $12 just for its silver content. But collectors are willing to pay far more for pieces with strong strikes, clean surfaces, or unique minting errors. One known variety from 1968 is the double die obverse, where Liberty, or In God We Trust, appears with a ghost-like shadow. Those have crossed $15,000 at auction. And then there are the spectacular off-center strikes and clipped planchets that almost never surface from this year. One such extreme error shocked bidders when it sold for just over $520,000, all because it was both a minting mistake and an early Kennedy issue in remarkable condition. To spot a potentially rare 1968, check the mint mark carefully. If you have a proof coin with an S mint mark in pristine shape, you could be looking at hundreds of dollars. But if you stumble across an error piece or an uncirculated example with blinding original luster, the numbers climb sharply. The best specimens can command high six figures, enough to change your financial picture overnight. We're only 2 coins in, and the values are already soaring. But the next coin takes us into territory that makes even seasoned collectors sit up and take notice. And before we move on, if you're enjoying this journey through coin treasures, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the chance to learn about the rare piece that might be sitting right in your pocket. Our next coin might seem like just another pocket piece from the 1980s, but the 1985 Kennedy half-dollar in fine condition hides a story that could surprise even seasoned collectors. By this time, the U.S. Mint was producing Kennedy halves largely for collectors, and their circulation in everyday commerce had dropped dramatically. This means fewer were handled in daily transactions, but ironically, finding a truly original 1985 that has survived decades without heavy wear is much harder than it sounds. The obverse still features the sharp, noble profile of John F. Kennedy, with Liberty arcing over his head and the date 1985 below. On the reverse, that magnificent heraldic eagle spreads its wings, clutching arrows and an olive branch, the same enduring design that has symbolized strength and peace since the series began. In fine condition, the details are still clear, but the coin tells the story of its age with gentle wear on Kennedy's cheek, hairlines, and the eagle's breast feathers. Now here's where this date becomes fascinating. The 1985 half-dollar saw its lowest mintage in years for circulation, with fewer coins struck compared to earlier 1980s issues. But what really excites collectors are the error coins, and some from 1985 are nothing short of jaw-dropping. There are examples struck on the wrong planchet, including quarters or foreign coin blanks, that have sold for extraordinary sums. A famous 1985 Kennedy struck on a copper nickel-clad quarter planchet, missing part of the design due to the smaller size, stunned bidders when it crossed the auction block for $482,000. Even a simple off-center strike can command 4-figure prices if it's dramatic enough. For the everyday collector, a fine condition 1985 might bring $4 to $10. But step up to an uncirculated example with bright mint luster, and you're looking at $50 to $150. A deep cameo proof from this year, with flawless mirror-like fields, can push past $500. And then there are the rare high-grade top pop pieces, graded MS68 or better. These are where you start talking in the tens of thousands of dollars. Pair that with an error variety, and suddenly you're looking at prices in the high 6 figures, enough to make anyone dig through their old coin jars in a hurry. The trick is knowing what to look for: a strong strike, clean surfaces, and any Unusual features like missing lettering, doubled dies, or dramatic misalignments. If you find a 1985 that ticks all those boxes, you could be holding far more than just 50 cents. You could be holding a ticket to a collector's bidding war. We've already seen values climb into the hundreds of thousands, but our next coin? It has a reputation that makes even longtime numismatists catch their breath. This is where rarity and value collide in the most unexpected way. Now we come to a coin from the tail end of the 1980s, the 1989 Kennedy half-dollar in fine condition. At first glance, it might seem like just another modern issue, but this date has some surprises that have made it a quiet favorite among serious collectors. By 1989, the Kennedy half-dollar had long since disappeared from most people's pockets and cash registers. They were produced in far smaller quantities compared to the 1960s and early 70s, and much of the mintage went directly to banks for limited distribution or into collector sets. That means truly original pieces that survived decades without damage are scarcer than many realize. The obverse still carries that dignified portrait of President Kennedy, his hair sculpted in fine detail, with Liberty arching above and 1989 proudly stamped below. The reverse continues with the powerful heraldic eagle, wings spread, arrows and olive branch clutched in its talons, a design that had by then become an American icon. In fine condition, you'll notice gentle wear along Kennedy's cheek, jawline and hair, with some smoothing of the eagle's breast feathers, yet the coin still retains a pleasing, honest look that appeals to collectors. Here's where things get really interesting. While a standard 1989 Kennedy half in fine condition might be worth just $4 to $8, certain varieties and minting errors from this year can skyrocket in value. One of the most famous is the dramatic double-struck example, where the design appears twice at different angles. These have been known to fetch over $25,000. But even that pales in comparison to the jaw-dropping wrong planche strikes from 1989, including one struck on a foreign silver coin blank, which sold for a staggering $510,000 at auction. That's right. Over $500,000 for a coin many people would overlook as just another piece of pocket change. High-grade, uncirculated 1989s with a flawless strike can push into the hundreds of dollars, especially if they carry the deep cameo-proof finish coveted by collectors. The key to spotting a potential treasure is paying attention to detail. Is the lettering crisp? Is there doubling on "In God We Trust"? Is the strike perfectly centered? Or does it show signs of a mint mishap? Any of these features can take your coin from pocket change to financial windfall. And here's something most people don't know. The 1989 Kennedy half-dollar marks one of the last years before the U.S. Mint shifted heavily toward producing coins almost entirely for collectors, making it a quiet milestone in the series. That subtle historical significance, combined with rare errors, is what drives the staggering prices for the most exceptional examples. We've now explored 4 incredible coins, each with the potential to deliver a shock to your wallet and your heart. But our final coin today is the one that has the power to stop you in your tracks. The kind of piece that leaves even expert collectors in stunned silence.